Welcome to the Season 5 of the India Energy Hour podcast. This podcast explores the most pressing hurdles and promising opportunities of India's energy transition through an in-depth discussion on policies, financial markets, social movements, and science. Your hosts for this episode are Shreya J., Delhi-based energy and climate journalist, and Dr. Sandeep Pai, Washington-based energy transition researcher and author. The show is produced by 101 Reporters, a pan-India network of grassroots reporters that produces original stories from rural India. If you like our podcast, please rate us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or the platform where you listen to our podcast. Your support will help us reach a larger audience. If there is one common issue that all electricity reforms face in India, it is the state of power distribution segment. State-owned power distribution companies Discoms, while being marred with financial and operational inefficiencies, also plague the rest of the electricity supply chain. Multiple bailout packages and reform schemes have moved the needle of improvement only so much. So what will it take to revive the Discoms and fix the forever leaking pipe? To understand this and the transformation that the distribution sector is undergoing, we talked with Alok Kumar. Kumar was former Secretary, Union Ministry of Power. An IAS officer, Kumar has held notable positions at state level and in the central government. He is currently Director General, All India Discoms Association, AIDA, a newly formed body to further better policies for power distribution sector.
Hello and welcome to the India Energy Hour podcast. Thank you so much, Mr. Kumar, for joining us here today. We are absolutely delighted to have you here, where we are getting this chance to pick your brain over your decades of career in Indian bureaucracy, your experience, especially in the power sector. And we can't wait to, dig in more on this. And thank you again for joining us here today.
Thanks a lot for hosting me on this India Energy Hour podcast. I'm equally delighted to join your program. You're welcome.
Thank you. I'll just, as is our tradition with this podcast, before we delve into the topic and, dedicate another hour into discussing what the topic at our hand is, which today is something very interesting, is the India's power sector and especially distribution reforms. We would like to focus on the person as well. And you yourself have, held various coveted positions in the state and central government as an IAS officer. So can you tell us about your professional journey? Where are you from? How did you decide to get into civil services, your initial years, and also some exciting, positions and roles that you took up during this journey?
Well, my whole of the initial schooling uh, happened at Saharanpur. It's a town in western UP. And I come from a family where my father is in teaching profession. So as usual, there is a lot of focus on studies in our family. So I did my say class 12 from Saharanpur, and I secured first position in the whole UP board in 1979 in class 12. And thereafter, I joined IIT Roorkee. In those days, it was called University of Roorkee. I passed out my degree in civil engineering. In fact, initial focus was more on say taking up an engineering job. So we wrote in Indian Railway Engineering Services. But in the last year, some of my friends were writing their forms for the prelims civil services. So I got curious. I asked them what is it. So they explained to me. But at that time, I was only 20 years old, and it was the minimum is 21 years. So I had to wait for 1 year. So next year, I filled up my form. I got into civil services, and for the time till I got into IS, I was in railways for most of the time doing my training. About the postings, I still vividly remember first posting in Rani Khet, say as those days were the joint magistrate. Only few people could become joint magistrate. So Rani Khet was part of UP. And I did some very prestigious districts, district magistrate in Varanasi and Ghaziabad. The two other districts were Faizabad and Banda. So, and I was also fortunate to work with the chief secretary as a staff officer, and then transport commissioner and managing director, State Roadways Transport Corporation. But real journey started in 2003 when I moved to Ministry of Power as director, reforms and restructuring in Ministry of Power, and then I learned the whole thing of the Electricity Act and unbundling of SEBs and all. I, after a tenure in Ministry of Power, I moved to the Central Electricity Regulatory Commission. We did a lot of path-breaking reforms. I moved on to state, some postings in Industrial Development Department, some housing and say electronics and IT. But most of it was in power and renewable energy. So I was the chairman of the distribution companies, the transmission company, generation company, and renewable energy development agency. And in the government of India, there was some tenure in the skill development domain and textiles. I was development commissioner, handlooms and handicrafts. And back to government of India again, I was secretary in the Ministry of Power, government of India. So most of it is has been in say power sector, renewable energy, and infrastructure development. So that is what my journey has been so far. And I will say most important part has been that once you join this government of India, then you always want to come back to government of India. So it gives you a very powerful perspective, national perspective as well as international perspective. That's all for this part. Yeah, Shreya.
Thank you for that. If I can like quickly ask you, you mentioned that most of your positions were around power infrastructure. You have had several positions there, and were at helm. So, if I can ask, what has been your most challenging role, if you can tell that? If was it power in the power sector? If not, then what was it?
I will say one of the most challenging period of my professional journey was implementing Saubhagya in Uttar Pradesh. So Uttar Pradesh had the largest number of hamlets, which were, we used to call them unelectrified or virgin hamlets. So they ran into thousands and thousands. And Ministry of Power and Government of UP, they gave us a mandate that it has to be done within 1.5 years. So mobilizing the whole machinery, right from planning, tendering, execution, and lighting up those hamlets and crores of households was the most, say, challenging but most memorable journey in my career. One thing. Second, I will recall uh, while in Central Electricity Regulatory Commission, apart from other things, the transmission was the backbone of the power sector reforms. So we could do two very key reforms in transmission sector. First is the point of connection tariff. Say, if you remember earlier, there was a problem of pancaking of transmission charges. If power was flowing across five reasons, so you have to add the charges of every reason, pancaking. So 30 paisa, five times 1.5 rupee. So there is a problem in the integration of city markets. So we could introduce the point of connection tariff, so whole India grid, and you pay on the basis of where you inject and where you draw the power. So that was the very path-breaking, say, reform in power sector. And second was the transmission projects were taken up, tied up to a beneficiaries. So we used to run after the states, please sign this agreement so that we can approve the investment for transmission. That was not the case. That was not the way we could build the grid that India has today. So in CRC, we took a decision to delink the investment approval in transmission from the prior consent of beneficiaries. And in one go, I remember somewhere in 2010, we approved transmission projects worth 51,000 crores rupees in that year. So that was one path breaking thing. I think those were the two things which you see the power exchanges and the power markets and the one integrated grid in India. So those are the most challenging thing, like obtaining universal access in one of the largest state in India, and also the path-breaking reforms in transmission segment of power sector.
Absolutely. I think transmission is a very important link, often ignored when policies are being made. But as you said, hugely responsible for a vibrant electricity market in India. Now that we are on the subject of electricity market, let's come to what is always called the pain point of India's power sector, and that is distribution, which has been marred with financial and operational losses over the years. There have been financial restructuring schemes, I think four in the last 15 years. There have been several reforms to fix the problems. Let's start with what do you think are the key reasons behind this ailing state of distribution in India?
A little bit of history. It was not always so. Beginning 1910, we started distribution of electricity in major towns of India, and it was mostly done by private companies. And there was a, say, localized generation through DG sets and some gas engines, some local hydropower. And the distribution was limited to the city residents, and it was fairly, say, profitable business. But after independence, when we constituted the electricity boards, the main focus was on expansion of grid to semi-urban and rural India. That was the need, the felt need of the people of India and the political system. And if you see, India achieved universal access somewhere in 2019. So we took almost like 50 years to expand the grid from few cities like in UP, the Kanpur or Lucknow, to a hamlet of like Balia or Pratapgarh or Gonda and all. And if you see, in those years, the efficiency or the profitability was not the key focus, neither for the organization, not for the governments. The whole mandate was to expand, and expand the grid to give the access to electricity to every citizen. So your organizations of state electricity boards were heavily engineering oriented because it was all construction, construction, construction. So when you have that type of focus for organizations, that you are an engineering organization and you have to simply do construction and expand, then the efficiency improvement and profitability takes a backseat. One more thing happened when you expanded the grid to rural areas and smaller towns and agricultural consumers. You see, you are taking electricity to comparatively a poorer section of society, and they constitute the large number of votes for the politicians. So on the one hand, it was a mandate was to take it to the such large sections of society which are very marginal in income, and the political system and the ground reality did not allow, say, tariff to be cost effective or collection of the bills in an efficient manner and professional manner. Result was that the distributing electricity to agriculture consumers and poorer households and focus being on expansion. So efficiency and profitability became a crisis somewhere in early 90s. And if you see, then there was this NDC committee headed by Sir Sharad Pawar and a CM's committee. Then they sat together and they say there has to be efficiency. Maybe boards will have to be reorganized. And there has to be minimum tariff. Otherwise, it is not sustainable. Demand is increasing. And the shape SEBs are, no private sector will come. And government can't invest that type of money to expand the system. So private entry came like Dabol and all, but it did not succeed because basic problem was the business model of the SEBs. And then we had this, say, unbundling of electricity boards and all. So some of the characteristics of those times still remain. Say, if we segregated generation company, transmission companies. So most of them have become profitable. I think they are reasonably in a good shape because there is professionalism. But distribution is the one business which is still in many states is the engineers oriented, and this whole issue of tariff setting and collection of bills has become highly politicized. So I will say the key factors behind these problems of distribution segments in financial and operational losses is the legacy of our organizations being very heavily engineering focused, construction oriented, lack of managerial capacity because mostly engineers were manning the top posts, or in some later after unbundling, they posted very young IS officers with not much experience in, say, senior managerial positions. And state governments also, they could do with, say, not paying subsidy, not paying government dues, not allowing tariff revisions. So things have come to this scale. But now, as we go forward, I will discuss with you how things are changing and how the realities are changing. So that is, I think, I feel the sum and substance of the reasons for the present problems in distribution segment.
Thank you for sharing this history. A lot is not talked about it, that it is a problem that has grown over the years and has remained unchecked. And the sole reason is that electricity continues to be treated as a social commodity rather than both a social and economic commodity. And that thinking is clearly missing. Do you think that the reform schemes that were planned over these all these years targeted this particular problem, or were they just fixing a part of the problem, hoping that the supply chain will take care of it?
The earlier attempts, right from 2002, when we had this tripartite agreements and this the some bonds and restructuring, I'll say the focus is still most of the schemes except Uday was either say often on some bailouts, but still the focus was on the expansion of grid. If you see Deen Dayal Upadhyay, Gramin Jyoti Yojana, Rajiv Gandhi Yojana, then Saubhagya. So I will say that there are some attempts, but we could not succeed fully because of two reasons. The main thrust of the programs, most of the programs was to push grants and assistance to states to do the expansion of grid. And number one. Number two, the the type of monitoring which requires year to year was not based on the real picture of audited accounts. This is a very basic problem which has been in distribution segment, that in many companies the accounts were delayed by 3 4 years. So during the life of the scheme, you had a very rosy picture, but after 4 years you discover that actually that rosy picture is not that rosy. It's quite say scary picture. But by the time the scheme is going towards closer and your pressure is to spend money, expand grid. So that has somewhat changed in the current dispensation. I will discuss. If I allowed, if you see the way the this RDSS was designed, say there are of course targets for grants and construction and all, but the conditionality of releasing of grant is based on an agreed action plan and which has intermediate milestones also. It is not some targets loosely buried below the pressure to execute the work and grant. Upfront, RDSS said that grant will not flow in a year if you don't meet the target which you agreed in your action plan. And there are also pre-qualifications. And I say one of the most important thing is that you have to produce your audited accounts right by September of the next financial year. In my sense, that has brought a lot of discipline. Of course, there has been some other measures which I will discuss, say, in few minutes. But I say the if we summarize earlier schemes, why they did not succeed, because most focus was on say this expanding grid to the villages, madras, and households, and spend the money. And there was no real focus on very strict monitoring based on your audited accounts, not linking the release of grant to the non-achievement and all. So that was the reason. On bailout side, I will say bailouts were not followed up. I'm not ruling out that possibility for future, but generally the current say realization in the Ministry of Power as well as the states is that bailouts will not do good to the sector. So now, if you see, there are several measures in place, not on one front, on several fronts, which in a way are keeping the discoms maybe on track on improvement. Maybe improvement is not the speed we want, but it has come to a new paradigm now, in my view. So I'll stop at it at the moment.
Got it. And good that you mentioned the parallel between how, the modernization and electricity access schemes were running parallel with all these schemes aiming to reform the whole distribution system. But these two are kind of dependent on each other as well. We have seen several case studies of states which were financially incapable to take up electricity access reforms because either their finances were not in place or they were not that much uh, economically equipped to take up large scale reforms. So do you not think that these two are dependent on each other, and if discoms do not fix their own backyard, they cannot move forward, bring in much more reforms, better technology, better services to electricity customers?
Both yes and no, because when you have a political urgency and mandate to do the expansion of grid, I'll give you an example. If you see the data from Uttar Pradesh, when I was there, in 2018, the whole organization was geared up for improvement in the, say, billing efficiency, energy auditing, and all. But suddenly we were told, and we respected because it's a political mandate, that you have to deliver in next, say, 18 months this Saubhagya. So the orientation of the whole machinery changes, and it changed in UP also. What I'm trying to say, when you change the organizational focus, so that the accountability and your delivery KPIs, they also change. So, and once you have expanded, like for example, in a discom, like Varanasi discom, we added something around 60 lakh consumers in a period of maybe 1.5 years. The consumer base has become more than double. So now your managerial systems, your metering and your monitoring is goes really out of gear. So I'm giving you again and again this my insight that our national focus was there on expansion, not on the supply reliability or efficiency improvement. But now, after having achieved universal access, in some state it is faster, in some slower. Generally, there is a realization that discoms have to be made, say, sustainable and viable. If you have to achieve the dream or the requirement of a modern power system, which gives you, say, a reliable power supply, less number of interruptions. So now that focus is again getting restored. If you see, of course, this culture of free power is still, say, is a pain, and it's one of the challenge. But system is trying to tackle with those free power thing also in its own way. But I can say the focus which we are now seeing for the last 3 years on efficiency improvement was not there earlier. If you see the type of scheme design or scheme monitoring was there. So you have different eras. Like if you see Europe also, during the industrial revolution, the focus was on production and production. They have a lot of problems in pollution and sanitation. But once they achieved a level of living, then the focus turned to these aspects. So I will say in power sector of India also, something like 2021 after Saubhagya completion, the now focus has changed to efficiency improvement, viability, reliability, capacity, say adequacy and all. Things that have now changed. That thrust, that era of expansion, I think we have almost done. Now is the challenge in our hands. Yes, yes, please.
Great. I like the parallel that you have drawn, and I think I agree to an extent that there is always an era, and this is the era of I hope an era of revolution in the India's power sector where discoms go through a sea change. You have opened a lot of threads here. Let me first two three things I want to delve into. When one obviously is free power, the other is expansion now, modernization later, and but you cited the example of Uttar Pradesh. I would like to cite an example that is cited by everyone whenever we are discussing discoms is Gujarat. How their expansion, modernization, and reform went hand in hand. Can we discuss that model for a few minutes? What are the lessons drawn from there, and are those lessons being replicated across other states as well?
I'll say the key factor in success of Gujarat, there are two key factors. First is Gujarat had a very favorable consumer mix. They had a very high level of industry consumption. So the whole tariff mechanism is in different paradigm like cross subsidies and all. That is one. You have to take into account that thing. Second key success factor has been a continuity of political leadership which believes and which delivers that despite of all pressures, we will keep improving our power sector and deliver a better power supply for our large and smaller enterprises and our households. Say, I don't want to go into political domain, but right from 2002, you see the almost same political regime, which is a commitment which has stood behind the power sector reforms. So, if same thing is happening in Haryana, but it did not continue in Andhra Pradesh after the first regime of Chandrababu Naidu. You see the change in the political regime. I will say certain things are given thing. Your resources, your consumer mix. So, and the conditions are more conducive or less conducive. But the key factor, as long as your distribution companies are government owned, is the determination of political leadership and its continuity. So that Gujarat model can be replicated. You can see the success in Assam also, Bihar also, because continuation of leadership. Bihar being even in a perceptionally backward state, I don't take Bihar as a backward state. They went ahead and implemented prepaid metering even before the government of India mandated. It's a political resolve. So power sector, as long as your companies are government owned, they are basically they can reform, continue to get reform and sustain reforms if there is a sustained political leadership which has that willpower and resolve and which has a longer term vision for the state that if a power sector is viable, if it delivers, it will bring investment, it will bring jobs also to you. So it's a matter of political leadership and your resource endowments or your consumer mix. I will say that to your question.
Right. And however much researchers or even outside commentators might dislike it, but in India, it seems politics and electricity will remain intertwined and have always been. So, how to address this problem of free electricity and also subsidize electricity to a section of the population, which, given the demography of the country and the democratic institution that we have, cheap electricity to a section of the population is not just a political tool, it is a social tool also, because it helps uplifting a certain section of the society while giving them access to something as basic as electricity. But free electricity is a menace. It exists in a urban town like the national capital of the country as well. Why it continues to be a political tool? First, second, according to you, how can it be tackled? You said that political willpower is one thing. What are the other tools with which it can be handled, where you can manage both the social pressure that a political party faces versus the economic demand of the power sector?
Complex question. So my answer will also be maybe I'll try to see that I keep it simple. Say, I'll give you one background. The it is also a product of the, say, your income levels and the type of money you spend on energy. Say, I have one data, like in a country like Canada, a household spends only 3% of its income on energy costs. Whereas in India, on an average, household spends 6.5% of its income on energy costs. So affordability is an issue, and it reflects into the politics because the households and farmers are the largest number. That is the reality we can't run from it. So there is always a temptation to placate or to please those voters to give cheaper power now. Now you have to see the consequences of, say, unbridled, unlimited free power and not paying for it. So the our legal framework says that you can give a tariff subsidy, but you pay for the subsidy in advance. If you implement that provision strictly, and tariff policy also says that there will be two type of tariffs every time, with subsidy, without subsidy. And if you don't pay, higher tariffs will come into play. The bills will be higher. So that is a key factor. If you enforce that, which I am happy is now being enforced substantially well, it brings a reality when you draw out the budget of the state government that you are paying this much money on subsidies, there's nothing left for development on the other activities. And I'm telling you, the as you develop, there'll be larger demand of continuous power supply, better power supply, a infrastructure which can supply reliable electricity. So I will say two things. Free power had its own ills. I have never support free power. Free power has many ills. I will speak about those ills in a moment. But to keep focused on your question, I'll say free power and its consequences will come in front of the politicians if you enforce Section 65 Provisional Electricity Act that you pay your subsidy. And at the same time, there is a equally strong political demand before the politicians to have investment, to have good supply for industries, to have a reasonably priced supply for industries for creating jobs. Now, fortunately, the free power is being talked and it's still a problem. But many states are realizing now that if you're not able to give good supply to your industries and big urban towns, your economic development will not happen. Jobs will not come. So once you have that realization, then balancing will come. And there's a limit to which you can fund the subsidy. So I will say one more thing. I don't have a very precise research. But if I say earlier, free power was announced in terms of 300 units per day, per month. But now if you see that amount has come down to 200, 150 in most of the states. So there is a underlying realization. Nobody will commit publicly, but there is a realization that this is not sustainable. Karnataka is talking that no, this type of freebies are not sustainable. We don't have cash. So there is somewhat, I think, correction started happening because they have to pay for it. But there are other, fallouts and undesired consequences of free power that we can talk separately.
Yes, can you please talk about it, the consequences, and also at the same time address this issue that why should a certain section in the Indian society not get subsidized electricity?
First, free power brings all type of indiscipline right from bottom. There is a temptation for the distribution company staff to book more energy in a fallacious manner in the consumption to category which is having free power. And in the domain where your system metering is weak, all meters are not working, agriculture consumption is not metered, so you overbook in those categories and you hide your inefficiencies. That is one of the biggest problem of if you do free, because You don't have to collect revenue and you don't have to show. Second is this: if you don't pay subsidies in time, and free power hits you very badly, and you are in a say perpetual say cycle of cash imbalance with the distribution company. They can't buy power. And there's another big problem is the wasteful consumption. Because free power means this: you the whole basis of energy efficiency and energy conservation has been taken away. So nobody will buy an efficient appliance. Nobody will switch off your power in the house. So this, if you wasteful consumption, will make you buy more power from say short-term markets and all. The cost of supply will go up. So free power, say unbridled free power, will play havoc with your energy accounting, your energy efficiency, and your financial management. So my personal view is that I will never recommend free power. You must charge something from that household. If you want to help that poor household, pay him directly. Say whatever you want to say, assist him 200 rupees a month, 300 rupees a month, pay him directly, but uh, don't take away this discipline of energy efficiency, proper metering, proper billing, and payment of subsidy accounting. So I could not understand your one small part, that why not every section getting free power. Can you just repeat?
I'm talking about the sections in the society which might given. I'll just try to rephrase it. I'm talking about a section of the society which ideally should deserve cheaper electricity. We're talking about rural agriculture population and section of population in urban areas who ideally, as per the social structure, should be getting electricity at a cheaper rate. Is it wrong, and why should they not? And is there a solution to balance this social economic imbalance?
There is a concept of lifeline consumption for households. So if you read national electricity policy, normally they say if household is consuming like 30 units a month or at the most 50 units a month, that type of household can be given, say, nearly free power, maybe or maybe one fourth the tariff and all. Those are the normally the norm for giving free power. And similarly, uh, agricultural, there's another problem. If you give free power, it leads to a lot of wasteful, say, pumping of water and water resources. So better will be to give them some direct subsidy. But the way we are living in, I think heavily subsidized electricity in a limited manner can be given to, say, small and marginal farmers and households who are have a lifeline consumption like 50 units a month, or maybe you can go up to 60, 70 units a month. They should be given and all other households should be given maybe in a slab, say, slightly cheaper rate for higher consumption, but after a stage should be full cost supply. If you want to help that household, there are other ways to help them directly.
Got it. And let's stay on this topic of electricity demand. Demand is shooting through the roof. We have crossed all historical records. But electricity access has improved clearly through all the schemes that you've talked about over the years. 24/7 or round the clock electricity remains elusive. Has the beleaguered conditions of discom played a role in keeping supply and demand situation muted in the country? Do you think so?
The demand is to be seen in two ways: the total demand and the unmet demand, or demand what you met. So the demand, intrinsic demand by the consumers, is one which is going to rise and which is rising on various accounts. And I will say there are very clearly three factors which are leading to higher demand, which will keep pressure on higher demand. First is the our urbanization and the demand for space cooling, the air conditioning demand from that will be major factor. Second is India is going is pushing, and it should push the industrialization, manufacturing activity. The share of manufacturing in growing GDP may be stagnant and maybe same, but overall the reports which are coming, industrial consumption is going up. And thirdly, you have connected millions of households in rural areas. So they are now in the process of buying new appliances and new comforts, the gadgets and houses. So these are three things. These drivers will say always keep the demand under pressure. It will grow. Now, what is the impact of the say weak financial position of discoms on this supply and demand? So supply the has improved. You know, even the data by any measure. The if you go to towns, say in UP also or in any other town, you will find that the type of outages we used to have 7, 8 hours, 10 hours, they are not there. They may be 1 hour or 2 hours. Even those are not acceptable. I'm not justifying them. So shortages have come down, but and in large part of India also for rural households, supply has really improved. Like in Gujarat and Haryana and all, they are close to 22 hours, 23 hours, 24 hours. In some states, like they are still at 18, 19 hours. So supply has improved. But of course, yes, if your distribution company is loss making, they will two very clear impact. First is they will like to prioritize the supply to the areas from where they're able to get revenue, collect revenue. They will supply on priority first to towns or industrial areas and all. And willy-nilly, informally, formally, they will roster supply to the losing areas like rural areas and all. So that is one of the consequence. Even a household which wants electricity and is willing to pay will not get electricity because the system they works is a substation or a subdivision is losing, roasting will happen. That is one. Second thing is because of losses, if your cash flow is not does not permit to purchase of power or procure capacity, overall power availability will also be affected by weaker position. So it will have impact. It is showing impact. If you see states like Gujarat and Haryana, their discoms are not loss making. In fact, their ACS ARR gap is positive. They are earning more on every unit than the cost. Their supply situation is definitely better, both in urban and rural areas. It does make a difference, and the rural area will more suffer more, and it leads to a lot of problems for consumers like your DG sets and pollution. And one more aspect important: if your reliability is poor, your industries will be tempted to set up captive power plants, and Discom will not be able to meet the demand, which is a paying demand. So it will further worsen the position of distribution company. So it does make impact, and no doubt, and it should be the priority area too.
And if we can discuss also the aspect of infrastructure creation, financially ailing discoms would also fall short of creating infrastructure or modernizing its supply grid as well. Can you talk about that as well?
Shreya, I think thank you very much because I had so many points in my mind. So I think that I did not include that in the list, and that is very important. So thanks for bringing it to the table. That case, when you don't have money even to buy power, where is the money to upgrade system or augment system? And I I've come from UP cadre, so I have only those examples. So it should not be taken something against UP. Like even a paying area like Noida and Ghaziabad, they're struggling to upgrade the system. Those are paying areas. Consumers can pay, but utilities don't have money to spare to upgrade their transformers, their underground cables, and all. So it does affect the capability of the system to supply reliable power. So it is a direct consequence of the weaker financial position, and that's a very valid point. Yeah, I fully agree.
You earlier mentioned, and we'd like to discuss it more now, that the bailout schemes did not work as they were intended. And I would like to talk about Uday, which, when it was launched, was all encompassing. It was giving discoms a financial bailout. It was pushing for structural reforms in their operations. It was a carrot and stick approach, which at that time looked very prudent. But somehow it did not have the results that the center maybe intended it to have. So, what were the shortfalls and what were the lessons that were learned, especially for the discoms to, cope with them or include them in their policies going forward?
I will say two things. Maybe it's a repetition, but Uday was eclipsed to some extent by Saubhagya. It came in between. I said you because as Principal Secretary to UP government in Energy Department, I was working very hard to make Uday work. But we were taken by storm of Saubhagya and the whole focus changed. So I'm not that the argument I'm making is not just I've heard from somewhere. It is my personal experience. Number one. Number two, Uday did not insist on audited accounts every year. So several states, most of the states used to give some data, which after 3 years turned out to be not true. So if you have a scheme, very well intentioned scheme, you shift the focus and you don't have the rigor of the audited accounts and the consequences, it will not work. Now, let me tell you, from RDSS alone might not have worked. What has worked with RDSS so far? It has been working, say, to a significant level. There are two other, say, mechanisms which are assisting the whole pressure for reforms. First is the late payment surcharge rules, which came in 2022, 1 year after the RDSs were launched. The consequence, if you don't pay to the generators and transmitters, your power will get curtailed from exchanges and from the interstate grid. Number one. Number two, there is a bigger carrot that you can borrow 0.5% of the state GDP if you adhere to the reforms. And also, the PFC, RSC have been mandated to have an additional prudential norm for discoms. So it's a whole package. Just one scheme in isolation will not work. So you have to push the distribution companies from on many front to be on track and take steps. That is my understanding. So we have been fortunate for the last 3-4 years, though maybe further progress has not been very fast, but apparently things at national level, they look on track because of many things going in parallel. One more small thing which we don't talk, even media people don't talk, is the fuel and power purchase cost adjustment charge. We made it compulsory in the rules in 2022, I believe, or 2023, early 23. Now, most of the states have adopted that thing. And if you read the news, there is some revision of 32 paisa, 42 paisa, 18 paisa every month. So your costs are being recovered concurrently. So there are very concerted package of reforms and mechanisms which is trying to improve the operational efficiency and financial performance of discoms. So let us hope that this pressure, say, keeps on working. So that is a comparison I'm telling you. Like Uday in isolation, being eclipsed by Saubhagya, no insistence on the audited accounts and all. It was not whole hog approach. But now you have RDSS and then flanked by this LPSC discipline, the additional GDP borrowing, and then prudential norms. Several things could. I think that will be my response to your query, Shreya.
No, thank you for this comprehensive response. Do you also think that, as you said, that a lot of things are coming together along with RDSS and as a part of the scheme? Do you think green energy open access and the push towards buying more green energy, is that also playing a role in it?
Again, both yes and no. It depends where are you. For states like Gujarat or Tamil Nadu or Karnataka, which are located away from the coal fields, it will reduce cost and it is very welcome. Overall, we should go green, but for states which are sitting on the coal fields like Jharkhand, West Bengal, or Uttar Pradesh, their variable charge of the coal-based power is less than the solar power. So they will have additional pressure on their cost of purchase of power if they push renewables. They are still pushing, but we have to find ways and means of, say, addressing those aspects because the simple cost economics will tell that. So they can do it still smartly to some extent, But basic economics needs more assistance to these states because their alternative options are cheaper. For Gujarat, it is not available. For Gujarat, coal-based power, being coal transported to 2,000 kilometers, solar is anyway cheaper option for Tamil Nadu also. So it will depend on the location of situation of a state. But by and large, for agricultural consumption, if you generate solar power in the day and you supply it, I think it will always say bring down your costs as far as if you're supplying the solar agricultural consumption. That is the general picture.
Right. What we are not witnessing across several states is tariff revisions, which is a part of RDSS. We are seeing that states are not adhering to the tariff norms that the central government come out with. A lot of states, rather than increasing tariff, have actually reduced tariff. Maharashtra recently has announced a 10% reduction in tariffs, which has come as a surprise to a lot of people. Do you think it is a problem? Why is tariff revision not being why are discoms not so disciplined about tariff revisions?
I will say first, tariff revision doesn't mean the tariff has to increase always. Because again, example like imported coal was say pushed in 2022 and cost is higher. Next year cost will come down. So tariff revision means that you have to scrutinize your costs, and if the efficient costs have gone up, you have to revise. More important is the issue of the tariff order. So to my knowledge, more and more states are issuing tariff orders every year now. Now come to the whether tariffs are cost effective or why the tariffs are being brought down. Say Maharashtra has a reason that they are pushing the solar power on a very large scale, 16 gigawatt. And initial results are very highly encouraging. If they succeed in absorbing that power efficiently, their overall power purchase costs are bound to come down. If they come down, then consumer is entitled to have the lower tariffs. Similar thing happened with the Adani's distribution company in Mumbai. In 2 years ago, they announced that we have managed our power purchase cost well, we'll bring down the tariffs. So if any state has smartly improved its power purchase costs, the consumers are entitled to a revision in tariff downwards. That is one side of the story. But yes, other side of the story is also true. The many states, the regulatory commissions are taking a very purist way that this was the lost trajectory I said 10 years ago, you have not met, I will not allow costs. Like I will let's say have regulatory assets and all. Those things are really the ills of power sector. And there's a need to have, say, more serious engagement with regulatory commissions, more serious analysis of the tariff orders. In All India Discom Association, which is a very new organization, we have also set up a study in association with REC to look at the tariff orders of 7 or 8 states and come out what the X-ray tells, what is the reality, whether the disallowance is justified or not. We need more engagement, more analysis, and talk to states, talk to regulators. But you're right. Say we should be worried that tariff is scrutinized every year. There is a tariff order which is issued. And if their efficient costs are going up, tariff should also go up. But if your cost can come down, tariff should come down. I'll give one more example. Some of the states, they were very favorable to MOU route power plants. And for their gains and for political reasons, they entered into some very, very expensive power projects in UP also. So if you enter those type of power projects and you bind your consumers for the higher cost for next 25 years, that is also not fair. So equally important is that you must pay attention to the efficient power purchase costs and keep the power purchase cost growth in check, but pass on the efficient costs. And if fortunately you are able to reduce your power purchase cost, there is nothing bad in the revision of tariff downwards. It should be cost reflective tariff. We are not saying always increasing tariff. That is my take on this point.
Got it. Thanks for that. And let me now come to the most interesting part, a question, rather, which brings strong opinions from everywhere. That is the privatization of power distribution companies, or the PPP model that now the government is talking about. Do you think it is a solution to all the problems of the power distribution sector? If yes, then why? If no, then what is the solution? Because it is really catching up. We You talked about UP, and thank you for doing that, because it is a state which is in the process of going for PPP mode for three of its distribution companies, which is a huge step for a state like Uttar Pradesh. Can you talk about it?
Yes, I will say the chances of successes are higher in the reforms through privatization. That has been the experience so far. As you take franchises, Bhiwandi, you take Delhi experience, you take Odisha experience. So second time, so some franchises did fail, but over by and large, wherever privatization has been done wholeheartedly and is supported, it has succeeded because there is a long-term institutional change which has a very strong incentive to keep the entity profitable. So privatization is a good solution. It has a higher chance of success because, as I said earlier, the in the government on discoms, you always run the risk of regime change or the loss of willpower from the political leadership for expediency. So I'll say ills of power sector can be better dealt if you go for privatization. But within the government ownership, because that will also stay to a large extent for a large number of years in India, there are things which we are trying to do. But yes, I'm a votary that I will not say privatization, I will say private sector participation, maybe through franchisee. Like in Rajasthan, they have a metering, billing, and collection agency. So, like in smart metering, you are doing PPP through MISP. I'll say larger role of private sector efficiency in management of distribution segment is recommended, and it has a higher chances of success going forward.
But there is resistance towards this idea. Whenever a PPP or a franchisee or the word private is mentioned, there is an outrage from the side of the discoms. That is one part of the story. The other is that the private sector itself has been very, very selective. It is now that the government came up with a set of notices and orders that a private sector company can go in and apply to be the second licensee in a certain geographical area. Is now that we are seeing some interest, but that again it is limited to areas which are low hanging fruits, Mumbai, Thane, Pune, and others. So can you talk about this conflict? Why does the government sector think has this image of the private sector, and why is India's the big private names not interested in power distribution?
I don't agree with that because if you see the type of consumer mix and ground reality in Bhiwandi was no better than any rural area. The type of consumer mix and the type of ground reality in the Yamuna Par area of Delhi, the BYPL was no better than a rural area. Private sector did succeed there. So that is a misnomer. Odisha has privatized mixed distribution companies, urban and rural. It's a matter of your approach and your faith in the system which you're bringing in. The opposition comes from vested interests. Say, I have no hesitation in saying the general perception, and it is correctly so. The a large number of the employees in the electricity companies are making money left and right. They are vested interests. They will oppose. Political class will also oppose unless until there is a visionary leader sitting as chief minister who want to push. Other no power minister would like to leave his powers to transfer engineers and to have larger contracts. Let us not get swayed by those arguments or those vested interests. Let us see what is the best for the consumers. Are not consumers happy in Agra? Are not consumers happy in BRPL? Are not consumers happy in Odisha or Bhiwandi or Ajmer? They are. So this vested interest, I think the political leadership, wherever it is strong, has a clear vision, can see beyond it. So I'll say there is no truth in saying that it is selective. Why did BSCS succeeded in the BYPL, which is a very tough area, Yamuna Par area? So I don't agree with that approach. And these are all apprehensions which are being spread by the vested interest. Let us try it in an honest manner, wholeheartedly, it will succeed.
I hope you have allayed some fear and panic across the stakeholders. I'll, quickly move on to the last segment, and this is a latest development that has happened in the power sector. The Union Power Ministry has been talking about new financial modes for power distribution sector or state-owned power sector, which is that listing or InvIT for profit-making departments of the power sector in states. It could be transmission, it could be Gencos, it could be Discoms. First, how prudent do you think that idea is? Was it long coming? And do you think it would be a success if it is taken forward by some states?
I feel it's a very good move because the you can see the benefits of listing in these central government companies, NTPC or NHPC and all. Once you list a company, your board governance improves. You comes into that domain. There's transparency on the board. People will come and sit. Your lenders will say. So listing is a very good move, and it as long as the company is government owned, if there is a mechanism which brings improvement in board governance and transparency and accountability to, because listing is first step. Later on, you can also say do a stake sale. So some private investor will come, or publicly held companies will come, or some institutional investor will come. It's a good move. We should go for it. We should improve the governance of board. We should bring more expertise. We should have more professional CEOs for maybe 3-year contract, 5-year contract. So that is a very good move. I think it should succeed, and we should support it.
As a concluding note, let me just summarize. You said that energy access is something that we have done. The reform schemes are going on. RDSS is all encompassing. The government is suggesting financial models. There are states going ahead being bold and proposing PPP, Uttar Pradesh being the case in point. Do you think it is time for India's power distribution sector to be bold and to experiment across both financial and operational perspective? Should they do that? And if they do, then three top things that you think the Indian distribution sector should do?
I will say first important thing is the improve billing efficiency through smart metering. Because my take is that if done properly and honestly, it can bring down your commercial losses by 5% in 2 years, less than 2 years. That that makes because there's already a scheme in place being done. So top thing is the smart metering and improve billing efficiency. Second thing is the governance improvement in discoms should be bold step. You constitute a board which has external experts. You select an MD, it may be an IS officer. I'm not against IS. I was an IS officer. You select an MD and then keep him for 5 years in the discom, hold him accountable, give him freedom. And third thing I'll say, make discom future ready. There is a lot of technology with us now, artificial intelligence and digitalization, which can help your operational efficiency improvement and also much improved consumer services and also better your load restriction and power procurement cost reduction. If you do three things, first, the immediate low-hanging fruit is smart metering, billing efficiency, improve the governance in the boards of the discoms, and third is adopt technology faster and faster to aid to help you in say process improvement. That is my take.
Thank you. Those were great points, and overall a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for talking with us. It was a great conversation. We learned so much, and there was so much to unpack. But thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, Shreya. It was a great experience for me also. Thank you. My best wishes. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the India Energy Hour. Subscribe to this channel to never miss an update. To drop us a feedback, visit our website or write to us at theindiaenergyhour@gmail.com. We are on Twitter. You can follow at TIEH_podcast and get in touch with the two hosts at Shreya_J and at Sandeep Pai.